Good morning. Wonderful to see all of you. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Colleen. I see that Joan is there.
My mic was off. Hi.
Where are you beaming in from? The early birds, we have a couple moments to. So, welcome everyone. We are here to really talk about the role of sacred storytelling in these wildly changing times. And I'm going to guide you through just an introduction to this world. And some of you are familiars. Nancy, you've heard some of this before. Welcome, Donna. Welcome, Jean and Lisa and Sophia and Sunshine. And and I'm also going to talk a little bit about specific role of what do we need from our storytellers this time? What is our role both in our personal lives and in the greater world as a whole? And then can you guys hear that background, by the way? You can. I don't think I can turn that off at this point, but well, let's see what I do here. Nope, it won't let me change it now. Okay, anyway. Lucky you, you get to hear the sounds of Maui. Usually they're pretty nice. Um, and and then I'm also going to tell you about a couple new programs that are coming into being. Welcome, Emily. Great to see you. So I'm going to start by just closing our eyes, bracing our feet to the earth, and just allowing yourself to place your hand on the part of your body that most calls to it. Perhaps that's your heart. Maybe that's the top of your head. Or just tuning into your body and saying, hey, what needs a little bit of contact, a reminder of connection, and just touching that part. And so immediately we're attuning to our deep knowing, our intuition, and just breathing into that for a moment, just breathing all the way in. And just exhaling that out, that knowing, that inner knowing that we have without thinking, that's always there, that's ready for us to tap into. I invite you to breathe in your intention for this next hour. If you could receive anything that you most wanted and needed, what might it be? Just breathing in your intention for what you will receive and experience this next hour. And then breathing that out into our collective space. And with this next breath, I would invite you to imagine that you could activate all the wisdom, all the knowing that's inside of you that might not be used or called for, as if you could call in the mana, the life force of energy itself, to breathe that in and open up every single pore of wisdom that is inside of you right now. And releasing that into our collective. And now I want to invite you to really consider what brought you here. What is calling you to this place right now? Is it because you have a story inside of you that's saying it's time for me to get out? Is it because you're looking at the stories outside of you saying it's time for me to be a creator of the story of these times? Or are you called to be a wisdom teacher, a lineage carrier, and you're called to be that memory holder of the old stories, and that you're here to make sure that they stay alive and living among us as guides through these times? Or perhaps you're just realizing that it's time for more joy, more play, more creativities, and that these are the tools for life, and that you want to engage these tools more and more in your life. So just really attuning to what is calling you here right now. And as you, oh, someone said that my volume decreased considerably. Is that true? Can you hear the volume? Can I get, no, you can't hear. Is that, wow. But, well, I didn't do anything. Now you can hear. You can hear. Okay. It's a miracle. Great. So did you guys hear that last little meditation? I did it with my eyes. You did. Good. Wonderful. So if anything came up that you want to share, please pop it into the chat room. As you can see, I keep my eyes on that this entire time. I love for these conversations to be as interactive as possible. And so as things come up, as something that as my muse tickles your muse, then please feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. And that conversation that we're going to enter into is a collective conversation. The great illusion of storytelling is that it's created by the person who's speaking. That's like the greatest magic trick. A story is actually created, it's a co-creative process out of our field of connection. And so your presence, your curiosity, your wonderment, all of that actually feeds what comes through me. It's super wild magic. I don't know how to explain it. That's why I like to start by saying, let's get grounded and focused. Let's become a unified field as much as we can in these Zoom realms. And that's why I say, if you're vacuuming, take the hour off. Let yourself just be still and receive what's coming through. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to send off a bunch of arrows in your direction. One of my favorite teachers, Stephen Jenkinson, says, I'm going to throw a lot of arrows at you. Some of them are going to land and some of them are going to whiz right by. But it's easier for them to land when the target is still. You know what I mean? And so when we can give ourselves full presence, the pieces that are going on inside of you, the untended bits, will have a little bit more time for you to tend them. And so that's one of my intentions for today, that whatever is kicking around and stirring you right now, may this time of a conversation of what is sacred storytelling, what is our role, and how do we open the hearts of those around us and change the world through every word that we speak. That's the game that we're playing. Now, I start with intuition because the hardest, if there's anything that's really challenging for people, and when I see this process, it's trusting. It's trusting the genius that lives inside you. And so that's another thing that I'm going to really want to infer to you today, to trust your impulses, to trust your creative impulses. Nancy came in right away. She's like, you know what I'm here for? I'm here because I need to develop my personal story. I'm in a moment of crisis. Isn't that great knowing? That's not avoiding. That's not, I don't want to do it. That's like, boom, crisis, decision point. Let's go. I love that. You know, and so here's what my intuition is offering us today. And I don't know why, and I can't wait to see what's going to unfold. But I want to invite you to think about your history with relationships. Okay, your history with relationships. And this can be romantic relationships. This can be work relationships. This can be family relationships. And I want to invite you to take a moment to think about something you've learned from past relationships, something that you give to the next person as a gift because of what you've learned, maybe through pleasure. Oh, really did that relationship well, or maybe through suffering. Oh, I learned what that mistake feels like. Now I know not to do that again. So it can just be like one line. What have I what have I learned from my past relationships? And if you could put that into the chat, that into the chat. And just know your generosity right now is about to feed us. We get to learn from each other. Fiona just jumped right in there. She's saying to be real, to be authentic, and to be me. I love that. And if we hear something that resonates, oh, yeah, I learned that one. Right. The more I'm just me, the more quickly we can get resonant. I was just with one of my elders, um, uh, um, Kalani Souza. Oh gosh, if you guys don't know about him, he's just an extraordinary gift to our times. And he's been in every room that you could possibly imagine in the world, from every echelon. He's been with presidents, he's been with military, he's an indigenous elder. He's just so many stories he's filled with. And he was telling me, he's like, I go in blazing into every room. I blast off every opinion shamelessly. And that way, my truth will make sure that the person that's standing in front of me will know if we're to be together or not. You know, I'm shameless about it. He's not trying to please anybody. He's trying to clear the path and get everyone out of the way that can't handle his authenticity because that's where he wants to live from. What a gift that is. Thanks for amplifying that. Nancy's saying a seed planter and not in charge of what the other decides. Oh man, that sounds like wisdom. When you allow the other person to be who they are. I want to know about what your seed planter, maybe planting ideas, yeah, okay. So Nancy's saying, yeah, I'll plant an opinion perhaps, or an option or a possibility, but then it's not for me to determine what they do is right or wrong. They're going to be them, right? Jean's saying, I've learned that listening is better than talking too much. Thanks, Jean. And curiosity. How far does curiosity go? Curiosity takes us so far. And Colleen's talking about boundaries. I'm not required to fix things. And just let others have their process. Not responsible for others' feelings. Ooh, Colleen. Not responsible for others' feelings. I think I'm still learning that. I hope I don't take that one to the grave. That's such a powerful piece, right? Stay in your lane. Who are you responsible for? Adler. Do you guys know of the philosopher Adler? He was working at the same time as Freud. And Freud came in and said, look, your parents mess you up, you're messed up for life. Adler was like, no, that was just part of your life. The rest of your life is yours. And what you do with it is what you do with it. That's your self-determination. He talks a lot about attending to your own tasks. And I think about that also as staying in your lane, staying in your story, getting out of other people's story. Just play the role in your story. Do your job. Um, Sarah is saying, if I have to always be forcing it, then it's not resonant. If I have to always effort, if that's what the point, it's okay. So there's no right fix, right? And so there's a brilliance in understanding and trusting when the flow of life is here. That's what I hear you saying, Sarah. How do I trust when the flow of life is with me? And if I'm forcing it, then maybe I'm not in the flow. Virginia's reaching out with love does not offer a solution, but sends care and prayers that can offer opportunities for growth. Right. I love that, Virginia. So just tuning in for a second, did any of you receive a little something that might be helping you with your current relationships? And if you did, this is no pressure. There's no right answer. I'm just purely curious. Did anyone receive a little something that was like, oh yeah, that could help me with my current state of relationships? Oh, not really. Well, way to surprise me today. Colleen got a little something. Okay. What I haven't learned is the relational piece of and how my unmet needs, right? The reason why I'm inviting this conversation is because each of us have these little threads of wisdom, these little threads of genius that live through us. And so oftentimes in our consumer time, and I would say that we are in the time of the consumer. When they look back at this time, they're going to say, this was the era of great consumption. And it's not just consumption of material things. It's not just consumption at Walmart. It's consumption of stories, of other people's ideas. It's constant. Every time we're looking at our phones. I went through Central Park the other day into this beautiful area with this fountain, all these people sitting around, where people used to talk to each other. Every single person was staring at their phone. We're consuming everyone else's ideas. And the thing that I love about storytelling is that it gives us that opportunity to do exactly what someone said, which was to pause, put more attention on listening. What happens when we listen is that our consciousness gets to be present. And we get to hear how other people's stories can influence our own stories. We get to receive the wisdom. I got to spend this last week and a half with two of my favorite elders, and all I did the entire time was ask questions because I wanted to hear how they got through the hardest parts, you know, and how what a gift that is to receive story to guide us. So let's get into it. All the ancients agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. That the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. And what that is that that's a clues to that we are a key part of creation. We are a key part to creating this world. This was one of our main roles on the planet. The Inuit had this beautiful poem called Magic Words. I don't have it in front of me, but it speaks to this time when people could become humans and people could become birds and change back again just with the mere presence of a word. It was very mysterious. It was very potent. If any of you have been watching Chief of War, no. It's fantastically violent, but it's also a really fascinating story about the history of Hawaii. And if you know what you're looking at, there are many scenes where they show the power of the word and how the Hawaiians understood that their words were so attuned to their gods that their physical environment would change and shift. And they used their words through prayers when they went to battle. They had a priest that spoke. And they talk, and they actually show what was been documented in stories about how when their priests spoke, the environment would physically change. They could call the storms in. They could call for rain. So this is an old way of remembering of our unique role on the planet. But also let us not forget that we are not the only ones using the power of resonance to speak the power of life into being. And it's kind of an amazing thing, right? It's like our heart gets to come through this channel between our consciousness and our heart, and we have this throat, and here's the highway. And so when we're in alignment and it's all connected, then wow, what do we speak into being? But the birds are speaking the world into being. And the whales are harmonizing our world into being. And so what begins to happen when those who hum the world into being, that sing the world into being, that speak the world into being, are out of alignment, are out of connection, are out of harmony. So I really want to invite you to really consider your responsibility. I love this word, responsibility, able to respond to the times that we live in. There's a word in physics that speaks to that once a word is spoken into a space, it stays here forever. And if you're particularly sensitive, I think I really do believe that we all have the capacity to sense the seen and the unseen. It's just some of us have a little bit more Pluto influence, you know. Some of us have a little bit more acceptance or normalizing around those sensitivities. Some of us just got exposed to a little bit more teachers, you know, but I really believe that as human beings, we were all born with a technology to sense the seen and the unseen. And some of you might know, like when you go into a room, it can feel really like, oh, it's like it feels lovely, you know. Or when you go into a room, it feels a little bit off, a little bit weird. I'm just curious, how many of you feel that? Yeah. Okay. So I just love that idea that when you go into a space, what was there before is still there. A part of it still lives there energetically. And so I love when I drive across the country, I started doing this when I go to like the really ugliest truck stops, ugliest to my eye. It's beauty is subjective, right? I can think I could sing a song here and leave that here too. Yeah. And I really want to imprint this idea that everywhere we go, we have the opportunity to infuse another kind of resonance, the resonance of beauty, the resonance of peace, the resonance of joy, especially in those places where we may not be feeling it. This is your power as a creator. And even to think about, well, what about the waters? What if I know that our waters are not well pH balanced? What if I know that the earth that I stand upon has been dealing with a lot of pollutants? Yeah. Can I sing? Can I speak the presence of healing into this place? Can I make this my practice? Can I be a student of consequence? And I really want to invite you into that because we all know when we've been in an argument, when we've been in a relationship with somebody, we're like, you know, and if we have a moment to take, one of my favorite ex-loves, I hate the term ex-love, he was just a love in the past, right? But sometimes when I would start getting a little off balance and blah, 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 he could laugh at me. He wouldn't take me that seriously, you know. And he wasn't being mean. I want to say there's mean laughter, and then there's the not getting caught in someone else's story way of being. And he had this real capacity to not get stuck in my story. And he would bring laughter in, and it would lighten the space. And I could see more clearly. We can do that for each other. We can do that for each other. And that piece of not being seduced by someone else's story is one of those pieces where we get to say, I'm in my own grounded way of being. One of my dearest friends, I just love her to bits. She says, Leah, you're a very good storyteller, but I don't believe all your stories. That's when I'm filled with doubt and blah, blah, blah. They don't like me, blah, 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 blah. She's like, oh gosh, don't believe your story. You're so convincing, but no. May we all have those people that don't get seduced by our stories, but that can be balanced, stay grounded, have a wide perspective. So the Hawaiians say that words are so powerful that they can stop the world or set it into motion. They say that words are so powerful that you can speak someone to their death. The Sicilians say that words poke holes in the universe. And I often think about that when I get a little angry, actually, because I'm like, oh, this word is going to stay here forever. You can't ever take it back. But I also think about it when people strategically use words to spread doubt, right? We've seen that many, many times. All it takes is one bad word, and someone's reputation a shadow has been placed on it. In Judaism, they have a teaching that says you do not ever speak about another person, good or bad. It's just like zip, you just don't talk about other people. And I think that there's an ancient wisdom that was really understood and known about the power of word and how so easily it can be misused and it can change the world for better or for worse. We're here to talk about how do we use our words for better, right? We know how they can be used for worse. We're living in it right now. How do we use them for better? So I want to invite you to think about what is a story? Let's just get into this. And Nancy, Chief of War is a TV show that is on Apple TV. What is a story? What are we talking about here? You can put it in the chat. You can speak it out loud. We're surrounded by them. Our world is made of them.
I,
Yes,
it's often used often as a form of meaning making.
right. So they help us make meaning. Right. Stories, it's the way that we organize and understand ourselves in the world. So a story, by the way, keep filling our chat box with what is a story, because you're going to feed this next part of our conversation. A story, and I always think about the difference between a story, which is how we make meaning through words, and data and facts and information. Okay. And so story, it's an ancient language. It's one of our first languages, and it's universal. And it speaks through symbol, myth, and metaphor. So, when you go to a country other than your own, you learn the language. You go to Spain, you learn Spanish. Right? I went to Greece. I tried to learn Greek. Now I know the phrase, it's Greek to me. But the land of story, you learn the language of symbol, metaphor, and archetypes. And what is metaphor? But it's the language of spirit speaking through us. Okay. So I want to give you another opportunity of looking about what is a metaphor. So if it's the language of spirit, that or a story is the Rosetta Stone, it's the great translator of the unseen world, which might be speaking in all different kinds of languages that you have no idea how to understand, but somehow through the genius and wild magical unexplainable thing, all these different languages can come through the translator of story and speak through a metaphor in your own language how it applies to your own world. Okay. So it's a really extraordinary thing. So when we think about how do we make meaning, every time that we look at a story, we understand our stories are not literal. They're not even linear. They help us understand our way in the world. They'll show us the consequences if we take a wrong turn and get out of alignment. They'll guide us and they'll hold wisdom. And they also really help with our memories. Stories are medicine, says Colleen, and a way to contextualize the human experience, right? With stories medicine, how do you think of how extraordinary can you be in your capacity of being a sacred storyteller, knowing that story is medicine? That if you're talking to someone who is grieving like nobody's business, maybe you tell them, and I would recommend listening first and then trusting your intuition. What is a story that I can bring to this person that will help them in this moment? Maybe it's a story of someone else that grieved for 10 years, or maybe it's a story of just joy and something to make them laugh. You know, I always think about how many of us know people, especially, I don't know why this happens to particularly women who are about to give birth. So many people tell them horror stories. I'm like, no, you don't tell them horror stories of someone else's birth. You fill a woman that's about to give birth only extraordinary stories of people who had good births. And you fill her with those stories. Same thing when people aren't well, aren't feeling well. You fill them with stories of health and wellness. And then this is where I want to take pause. And then you listen. We don't impose our stories of how we think they should be on another one. We know that it's just a gift that they can have. You know, I've had 3 friends die in this past month, and none of them wanted to go. Each of them, right up until the last day, were not willing to say this was the end. Each of them were all praying for miracles. And in this moment when you've got someone who's at the threshold of life and death, if there's anything I come to understand, this is the time that all you do is listen to them. What's it like being you right now? And give them an opportunity just to share their story. So, this idea of how do we be in relationship with the story as it wants to come? Stories can be medicine, and they come as medicine in many different forms. We can offer a story. Let me give you a story of joy. Let me give you a story of courage. Let me give you a story of possibility. We need these stories of possibilities. Let me tell you how someone else got through a storm, you know. And when we let these stories, when we speak through allegory, when we speak through myth, we exit the linear side of the brain. We give that right side of the brain, left side of the brain that's always doing things, right? Got to figure it out, got to figure it out. You give it a little, have you ever seen someone, there's the most fun thing ever is when you go into a room, you say, once upon a time, and all of a sudden there's this collective sigh, and people lean back and they start to receive. And one of the things that happens in that space is their nervous system gets to rest in the resonance that the storyteller is creating. So one of the things that we do as storytellers with our resonance is we literally create a field of energy. And when we really know what we're doing, we're actually aligning the energy in the room. And so when you hear a really potent, powerful, and alive story, there's something that happens where you could hear a needle drop. I tell my advanced students, you know that you are not doing your job when people are coughing and sneezing. I don't know how that works, but it's really true. It's a quick indicator that something has not stilled in the space. The story can't land. And so this is one of the kind of unspoken rules of the sacred storyteller is we understand that we're conductors of energy, that we're creating a place for people's consciousness to open and expand, where a new idea might come into form. We're creating a space where perhaps on this particular day, you know, this place of resistance, I'm right, they're wrong, and da, ba, 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 where there's a lockdown in the thought form. Perhaps Virginia brings me the story of this extraordinary heartbreak that she had. And all of a sudden, my heart can break. And all of a sudden, the threads loosen and expand a little bit. And all of a sudden, I might be able to see a blind spot that's been in my world. And all of a sudden, I've got more fuel to get across this initiatory experience in my life. That's how stories can work for each other. That's why it's so important when we talk about one of the things that happens in storytelling is that there's a lot of listening. How often do you sit with your friends and let them just tell their stories without interrupting them, without asking for more information, without telling them that you had that experience too? What happens when we're constantly interrupting is that we're interrupting the flow of genius that could be coming through them because so oftentimes we understand the truth that lives in our stories when we speak them out loud. Once again, I'll thank and bless my dear friend Dominique, who says that story is not true. I heard what's running around, and that's a beautiful reflection that we get to have. So stories define and they educate us, says Jean. Stories are who we are, right? One of the best ways to know somebody is to listen to their story because they can't hide. You're going to hear their relationship with their mother. You're going to hear how they deal with conflict. You can hear where they're stuck in their life. And it comes through the words in their stories. There's no hiding in your stories unless someone's not telling a true story. But if we're really attuned, we'll feel that in our bodies. And that's what's so different about what we're being asked to do in that there were times in our life when people would come into the world, when people would come into villages, and the storytellers were the keepers of memory. They were the keepers of history. They were the keepers of news. They would share all the information, but they shared it through story. And then the people would know their storytellers. They could have that human to human experience. They could feel the resonance. We don't have that luxury anymore. We are being bombarded by words that are coming through and interrupting us all the time. How do you know what's true? How do you know it's real? How do you even know who wrote that and who created it and what they're in service to? We're being asked to manage so much in our lives. And that's why I feel incredibly inspired to create this space where we can come back into the practice of one of the greatest tools that humans have in relationships and relating, which is this capacity to create and to create with our words and to create through story. And then Jean's also saying they're the best gift we can give our children, right? Okay. So a story, another way of thinking about it, it's an operating system. It's the thing that programs us. When we hear a story, it shows us what to believe, what our values are. Yeah. When we think about origin stories, these are the stories. Sean Keane, one of my favorite teachers, has origin stories, creation stories. Those are the earth speaking out loud. And this was the first operating manual for how the world works. If you want to know how the world works, and particularly how the world works in your hometown, find the original creation stories of the earth-based people, the indigenous people from your community, and then learn their stories. And that's going to begin to give you guidance on how the land that you live on speaks, how it operates, what the rules are. It's very simple. With so many of us, those operating manuals have been hidden, lost, forgotten. And I want to tell you that one time I was in Ecuador. I was sitting there with this lovely fellow, and I went and, of course, I was like, "Tell me all your stories," which you can't really do. I had to learn the hard way. You can't actually tell people to tell you their stories. You have to create space for them to emerge. Stories don't come on demand. No, many stories do not come on demand. The good ones will only come if they're beckoned, fed, and nourished. But I didn't know that, and he was very generous with me. And he did. He told me some stories that his grandmother had told him. And then he explained to me how so many of those stories are going to be lost because not many people speak her language anymore. And when she goes, a lot of those stories will go. And I got so sad. I was just like, how could this be like? How could we lose all these stories that teach us how to be right in the world? And it's like the earth spoke out loud in that very moment, and it was like it gave me a little smack on my head, and they're like, "What an egotistical, thought that you just had. Where do you think those stories came from? They all came from the earth. The earth is still here. Someone, at some point in time, had the good sensibility to get quiet enough to listen and heard that story, and then repeated that story, and the story was so powerful, it kept going. Why on earth would you think that would stop? So please don't think that these stories have gone silent or gone away because they're all still here. But what they require is for your fantastic, deep, clear, focused listening and for your trust that this beautiful earth of ours still yearns to be in connection with us, will still speak to us when we ask. So, again, one of my greatest guides that I go to when I'm feeling a little untethered in life is go to a tree. They're so generous, just designed to give. And so, go to a great tree if you're ever feeling untethered and ask for a great story. And I really do believe that if you're the kind of person that wants a story, that the story will arrive. But it's the trust piece. That's what takes more practice than anything, but trusting in what you receive. Okay. So we got a little hands-on, like what is a story? It's this extraordinary tool that we can use for great good or can be used against us. And I want to talk about that because the brain is dumb. The brain, it's just a piece of material flesh. It's our consciousness that's something else. Our brain is designed to survive. It has a job. Its job is to keep the body going. Okay. And so it will do that at all cost. It will always keep life going. But it's not going to think about what's right or what's wrong. It's not going to think about the next 7 generations. It's going to think about survival. And so now there are many, many very smart people that understand the power of story and its capacity to manipulate the brain. Okay. And so what happens when we get bombarded by information is that information activates just one side of our brain. It activates our left side of our brain. It's not the feeling part of our brain. It's not the empathetic part of our brain. It's not the sensory part of our brain. Okay. Stories activate the whole brain. And so when we come into a story, we can feel more of our body. We can feel more of our heart. We have an expanded sense of consideration. We can start to apply, oh my gosh, Nancy's story about that relationship and what she learned. Oh, I can apply that to my own. You don't do that when you start getting facts and information and stats. It's very flat. It's one of the most I got really fascinated by this because I used to work a lot in the climate movement. And you'd be in this room with a bunch of joyful people that are, coming together to do good things in the world. And then all of a sudden they would show the stats and facts, and all the energy in the room would go. And I was like, whoa, what's happening here? And I was like, oh, we can't metabolize numbers. That's not how this operating system works. We metabolize, we make meaning, we gain understanding through story. So facts are like one thread in the tapestry. So if we think of another metaphor for story as the great tapestry of life, and a beautiful tapestry is when all of our threads can be next to each other, right? And that's harmony, right? And so when we're looking at that as the metaphor, and we say all of a sudden, I'm going to define our world through one thread. What a small way of looking at our world. And so that's one of the great challenges of our time when we look at the state of our world is that so many people are defining it through numbers rather than through story. And so, what will a story encompass when we talk about the state of the world, or we talk about relationships, or we talk about our dreams, or we haven't even started talking about dreaming yet, but it'll involve a couple of things. One of the things that story does is that we'll talk about space. Tyson Yekapora, which is one of my Sand Talk. What an amazing, amazing book! And he talks about good stories and bad stories. And he's one of the guest teachers in our library. And he talks about, a good story. You always know a good story because you know where it lives, you know the place, you know where it came from. This is also, one of the great tools of Sacred Storyteller is it really does help you be very clear in your line of thinking when you're navigating all the facts and information. You can ask two questions that will easily help you determine if this is a story you want to carry. It goes like this. Do I know where the story came from? Do I know where the story came from? Do I know the land that it comes from? Do I know the creator? If you don't, you can just start asking questions. You can look at it as, well, that's interesting. You don't have to say it's right or wrong or true or fact. You can just be like, well, that's interesting. You know. The other question is this story coming in service to life? Does this story come in service to life? This is where we start talking about the role of a sacred storyteller. So, what makes a story sacred? I'm asking that question. What makes a story sacred? And I just realized I wanted to tie up a thread because I started this conversation. What will stories do for us? They're going to connect us to our past. They're going to be connected to land. They're going to connect us to our future. And they're going to give us a role to play. These are all aspects of great storytelling. Somewhere in there, we're going to have context for understanding ourselves in the world. And it's going to fill us. And I really believe that this is one of the most urgent things that we need to think about when we think about storytelling is that our stories need to start getting infused with possibility. Stop defining the future. You're spellcasting. And that's in our personal lives and the greater sense of the world. And so when we infuse the world with possibility, we're actually being more authentic and more honest because what's going to happen will be determined by what you do next with it. So all of this end of the world stuff, I'm not saying that it's not based in some very real and devastating facts and information, but I'm saying even that's just part of the story. How do we live in the wholeness of it? So, okay, what's the sacred story? And how do we apply this to our lives? Who's got ideas? What's a sacred story? And there's no right or wrong. This is a great moment to practice eloquence. And what is eloquence? It's that trusting. This is the key of the word. The key. Yes, Colleen.
I'm not even sure what I'm going to say yet.
Perfect.
But
Thank you.
the first thing that comes to me is that um, it has a life, that it's a living entity or body
Yeah.
with a specific mission for whatever that story is supposed to uh, carry and
Yeah.
share. And
Yeah.
exactly what you were saying earlier, just in terms of like that resonance, that vibration, um, even listening to your voice as you're talking, that resonance, that vibration is shifting our consciousness. You can feel it; it's palpable.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that's the first thing that comes
It's
to
beautiful. I
mind.
love I love hearing that, like, right, it's a living being. Can you imagine that? Like, can you imagine this is a fun game to play. Think about all the stories that are surrounding you. The story of your parents, the story of your birth, the story of your love, the story of your ex-loves, the story of your work, the story of who you are in the world, and that all of these have there's life in all of them. They take energy to exist. Okay. And so when we think about, and I don't know your belief systems, but I'm going to play with this belief system that this beautiful body that we all have is a total miracle, and that our souls live inside the body. Okay. And then a story has an energy that lives inside of it. We can say it has a spirit. And that when we engage that story, when that story engages us, it lives in us and lives through us. And then there's a transmission. So when I carry a story, I can bring a story of joy, and then I can share that energy in the room. Or I might be really weighted down by the anger, by feelings of anger or of rage. You know, what happens, and we've all been in this experience, what happens when that energy gets put into the room? Some of us have more water. We can easily cry. We can easily release. Some of us, I'm an Aries moon. I call myself a part dragon. So when I get fired up, I mean, I breathe fire. And I have had to learn that when I'm with other people, because that's such a natural expression, I have to literally turn and face in another direction while I'm talking to them so that my fire doesn't get on top of them. Okay. And so we learn how to work with the elemental energies as they come through us through our story because we're that powerful. Whether we're thinking about it or in the intentional practice, it's happening. So Jean is saying sacred stories have the power to resonate with and heal the listener. Right. And I really love how you put that, Jean. Sacred stories have the power to, but it doesn't mean that they will. I once spoke at an event and they said, Leah's going to raise your consciousness. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I will not do, I am not inside your consciousness doing anything. I am definitely here and I will create an opportunity. And then you determine what happens in your own consciousness. You're the one that's going to play with it. So, and I think it's a really important aspect to keep that ego in check when we're working with, okay, I'm in collaboration with this story that has the capacity to heal. I come with an intention to create spaces where healing can happen. Healing can come through the story. And then I know that's my job, and then I'm done. And then what happens in that other space, that's totally up to that other person that's in the place of receiving, their capacity to receive, their capacity to see where they are in their soul journey. And none of that is your business. That's where I've seen so many healers, facilitators, guides, leaders go wrong, where they think they know what's better for someone else. No, I think every humble, really potent and powerful person in that position really understands the role of the guide, and that's to walk beside. And that we don't ever know another person's soul contract. We don't ever know their journey. We don't ever know what they're here to alchemize. And that is just having that total respect for that alchemical process. Virginia is saying sacred storytelling resonates with the mysteries of life that is beyond what we may know or see and will include past myths, persons, tales, and meaning, and identify things. Sorry, I'm having a hard time keeping my space. Identify beings in the world that have no voice, so that we, the listener, are invited to belong to a wider world. We create our wisdom as we thread together these voices. Virginia, that is so beautiful. And this speaks to our responsibility to give voice to those that don't, I won't say that don't have it, but maybe they can't be understood. So perhaps it's the voice of the ocean. Voice of the ocean. She's got a voice. You go near her, you know she's got a voice, but not everybody has ocean ears that can hear it or have taken the time. Or for someone who has been consistently or persistently placed in a victimized role in the world, and they don't know how to speak up for their own rights. They don't have practice. They haven't been told that they can. Right? Or a child. Yeah. I really think that even more and more these days, the elephants need our voice. The whales need our voice. And so that's a really great practice to just consider, what in the animal world are you naturally connected to? And I want to give you an opportunity to play with this for a minute. What in the animal world are you naturally connected to? I know that for me, in the water, whale, on land, lion, and in the sky, owl. I've noticed, I was like, it's the elementals, you know. So when I think for who am I responsible for? And that's what I really want to invite you to as we come to the end of this class. Who are you able to respond for? Who can you use your voice for? Who do you want to give the beat of your heart, the resonance of your life? What do you want to speak for? And if you want to put that in the chat, I welcome it. I'd love to hear what's coming alive for you right now. And this class is really, it's designed to be an introduction to this space. It's designed to be an introduction, a place where we can come together and get a sense of, what does this feel like to be playing with this kind of material at this time? Dale is saying, in water, dolphins. Dale's going to be fun on the dance floor, I imagine, and playful. Right? Those dolphins are so committed to joy and play. And don't we need people speaking for that? So this was really designed to be an introduction to say, hey, this is a little taste, a little nibble. And I do this because I'm really passionate about helping people understand one of the most powerful tools that we have that's built into us to navigate these times. And I do this because I really believe in those moments, if you find yourself feeling hopeless or powerless over a situation, that you can always come back to remember, oh, no, no, no. I'm not doing this by myself. I can always ground, source, deeply open my ears and my deepest listening for what wants to guide me through those times. And then I speak that into being. I have the capacity to speak life into being. And that's the final thing about what I'll say is a sacred story, because Colleen started to speak to that. It's a life force, it's a living being, and it's here in service to life. It's here in service to life. It's here to bring harmony. It's here to bring unity. And it's not that it won't show you the hard and devastating things that humanity is capable of, but a sacred story will take you there. It's sort of like the night before Christmas, whatever that movie is. It'll take you there, but it'll always bring you home. It'll always bring you home. So this is really a call for more sacred stories to come alive. And if it's just in your personal life around the living room table, if it's bringing more awareness to how am I speaking about the state of the world, how can I always be saying, well, it looks like we're going here, but this is still possible. If we don't speak to the possibility, it doesn't have a way of existing. This is our role to continue to speak about what's possible. Pauline is talking about crows because they are so plentiful in my area. Yay, I love crows, are so smart. Jean is also for dolphins, elephants, and hummingbirds. And Virginia would like to speak up for the polluted rivers in our world. So we'd like to take the voice of dolphins, salmon, and kingfishers who fly up the rivers. I'm about to co-create a project with one of the rivers in the UK. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to tell you an amazing story at the end of this. Okay, so we're going to be here for about 5 more minutes, and I'll complete with 2 of my favorite stories. One of them I'll be telling you for the very first time, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so here's what's coming down the pike. If you want to play, I have a couple of different ways that we can play. One of them is this starts November 11th, this class I'm about to tell you. This is for a very small group, and it's called the Soul Story Luminary Council. This is for people who are saying, I want to get to work on the story of my life, and I want to cross through a threshold of where I'm living in my different stories, and I want a very focused time to do it, and I want to do it in a small group, and I want to be held accountable. I really want to see a change in my time. And so this is a Soul Story Luminary Council. I'll put that link right in there. And it begins with where I give you a soul story. A soul story is a one-on-one reading. This is a very ancient form of storytelling. There's very few people in the world that do it. And it took me a long time to understand that I was remembering something very old. And what basically is we all have the capacity to have sight, which I really do believe in different ways. What I do is the genius that runs through me can see how your life is living in the mythic dimension. So I see your life through metaphor, through symbol, and through archetype. And what comes through in our session is a story that includes that metaphoric journey along with song and chant. So it's a very vibrational experience, and it gives you very tangible images and ways to speak to those things that you know and that you can sense, but now it gives you a way to more consciously relate to them in the world. And different stories will have different kinds of practices and guides. It really depends on what your intention is. So for this class, it begins with that story that you'll work with, and you get to work with that story as a guide through our 6-week journey. And you also have opportunities to say, okay, I want to take on some big stories in my life that need healing. And maybe it's a story of love, maybe it's a story of money, maybe it's a story of purpose, but you're going to have an opportunity to go on this journey to really work through your stories. And so that's fun to me. I love doing this stuff. And the other thing that we've got coming up is a 6-week class. It begins this Tuesday. And this is called The Story of Change. And it's really about we're going to be taking on this character, this persona of change, and how it runs through all aspects of your life. This class is filled with possibility. You're going to be infused with so many stories where people have changed their lives, changed situations. But you're also going to have, and I'm so excited about this. Oh, I wonder if I can show you. But I wrote a book, and it's called The Little Book of Change. And so you're going to get to work with this book throughout this 6-week class, and it guides you through how to be with change in your life. It fills you with different rituals, different practices, different creative processes to address change in many different forms. That's a great class if you want to work on change in your own life, but also if you're a facilitator, leader, guide, and you want to support others, you're going to leave with an entire toolbox and a book for how to work with change. So that's coming up, and we start Tuesday. And then there's something else that's coming, and this is really exciting. And you guys are the first people that I'm actually telling you that this is live, because it's finally live. And it's the Whale Dreamer Council. This is not like anything you've ever seen me do before. This is 12 years in the making. I started this book a long time ago, and it's called The Whale Dreamer. And it was one of the things that was born with the story that came through was the pathway to social impact, ways of engaging with the world. So in this, are people who just say, I want to have a voice for oceans. I want to have a voice for the whales. I want to work with other people that are doing this. I want to connect with whale dreamers. actual whale dreamers from New Zealand. I want to go into dream time in my own world and start really listening to the dreams that need to come alive in this time. Oh, I want to know a little bit of science. I want to understand the ocean better in small bites that I can easily take and share with others. And I want to know and support those who are on the front lines of protecting our planet. And I want to be part of that protection. That's what our membership dues go to. So that's the Whale Dreamer Council. And then for those who said, oh, I want the story of the whale dreamer that inspired all this, well, that's also there. And I'll start reading that one chapter a week. So I'm really excited for this. It'll be live and you can listen to them on your own. But that's coming up. And the other thing that I'll just say is that you might see from my background that I just moved into my new home in Maui. I no longer live in Topanga, California, with great grief in my heart and great joy to be here. And I am, for the first time in a long time now, taking private clients again. So while that I've been in that big transition for the past year, I stopped taking private clients. So I actually have 3 openings right now. So if you're also someone that says, I'm here for the big win. I'm here to cross a threshold in my life. I want to bring some aspect of my voice into being. I might want to finish a creative project and bring it through, or I might want to change a big story. And that kind of focused work one-on-one can be really impactful. And it's not designed to go on forever. I believe that this work it's threshold work. And so I love working with people who are saying, game on, I'm ready. I just can't do it all by myself. And we can't do it all by ourselves. I always say forests aren't designed to live by themselves. That's just a tree, right? A forest is all of us together. So those are those 3 classes. If you have questions about them, I'll stay a little longer. But first, I'm going to leave you with 2 of my favorite stories. Which ones was I going to tell you? That's so funny. I had 2 in mind, but I'm going to tell you one that I just heard. I love this story. This came to me from Kalani Souza, and he was talking about how he's done a lot of work to collaborate with scientists and indigenous knowledge. He says he can't understand the world, and so many of the scientists have come into the land that he lives with, and they come up with these factors, and then they talk to the indigenous people who knew that and so much more. The scientists are like, "What? You guys already knew that?" And they're like, "Yeah, we've been living and remembering and continuing the understanding of our planet for a long time. You should maybe come to us earlier in the process." And he was talking about how they get through storms. You know, the Hawaiians would get through big storms and they would travel in these canoes. And when they would see the storm coming, he said the first thing that they would do was they would try to get out of the way, so they would try to circumnavigate the storm. But if it wasn't possible, they started taking apart the boats. They would loosen all the rope work. They would take certain pieces off. They would flip the boat over. They would get out of the boat. They would get underneath the boat where they could still hold on and have plenty of air. And the boat would actually stay in one place as the storm passed through. And he said the storms usually only come through about 20 or 30 minutes. And then afterwards, flip the boat back up, tie it back together, and start rowing again. I love that story. It gives me so much guidance to think about how to live through the storms of our life right now. I don't know about you, but I feel a storm coming. And I'm like, how do I get ready for the storm? Can I circumnavigate it? And if I end up in it, how can I loosen? How can I become more malleable? How can I think that I don't have to travel through the same shape and form as things have been? And how can I also know this is temporary? This is temporary. What do I need to do to get through that so I can put things back together again? Guys, I can't believe I forgot the second story. I just knew that I was going to tell you one. That's never happened before. I hate perimenopause. I just hate it. That's funny. That one, I guess it doesn't want to play today. It just went zoop. So maybe that's all that we need right now. It's just that story. Michael Mead would always say that when he comes to a group, and I started working with a lot of big storytellers, and of course I asked them in advance, what story are you going to tell? And they say, I won't know until I'm there. And I said, really? And they said that it's like, yeah, I won't know until I'm there because I feel the people. Michael said that sometimes he'll start feeling the group before they get there, and a story will come and it wants to be told. And he said, and if I don't tell that story, if I tell the story I think I'm supposed to tell rather than the story that I thought I was supposed to tell, he said, then everything goes wrong. And it's the only time that I've had regret in my life. And I had this one experience where I did a story with Joel Ben Izzy, and he's also in our master teacher library. And I gotta say, all these people that I've mentioned, they're all in our master teacher library. And so if you just want a rich, delightful experience of getting to sit with all these wisdom teachers and get all their stories, I'll send you a link for how to do that as well. Um, but uh, when we were coming to this event, we both, we were just preparing for this event that we were doing together. And I said, Joel, what story are you going to tell today? He said, oh, I'm going to tell the story about when I got thyroid cancer and I lost my voice. And he said, Leo, what story are you going to tell? I said, oh, Joel, well, I'm going to tell a story about when I got thyroid cancer and I thought I was going to lose my voice and I didn't. True story. So we tell this story. It's a very small event, maybe like 20 people came. And there was a woman there that had just been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. True story. So I tell that because trust your gut, trust your instinct. Allow yourself to know that there's an intelligence that's happening between you and this person. And if you have an impulse to share a story, you can say that, and you can say, I have a gift for you. I'm going to give you a story. That's how we're going to end today. I'm going to invite you to take yourselves off mute, to give a little hoot and holler, say farewell, have a great day. I'll be teaching a class again tomorrow that's very specifically about how to change a story. We're going to go into the mechanics of how to change a story. And then I'll also stay on a little bit longer if anyone has any questions. So I invite you to take yourselves off mute. Have a great day. Farewell.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'd like to ask us a quick question, Leah.
Yes.
I heard you had just moved to Maui, and as it amazingly happens, I'm coming to Hawaii in Christmas, just for 3 weeks after Christmas. And I just wondered, do you ever do in-person days or retreats that I could possibly come and attend? I don't know if you've got that far, but in beginning of January, we'll be there for 3 weeks with a good friend of mine.
Well, I'm actually leading a retreat in February called Writing with the Whales. And so that's February 1st through the 7th. That's a full retreat. We have 3 spots left on it. And then I am going to be at my mother's 80th birthday until January 13th. So I'm actually going to be off island. But I'll do, like, if you're going to be here the first 3 weeks of January, no, you're going to be through Christmas. Are you going to be here after January 13th?
Yes, after January 13th, but I think we go back on the 20th something or other, 26th, yeah.
I easily put together a 1-day workshop for when you're here.
Oh,
How about
that would be so beautiful. I would just so love it. But I will just, I'll write to you with the exact dates and
Okay.
who I'd be coming with, but I would just so appreciate that. That would be beautiful. Okay. Thank you so much.
Look about, ask and you shall receive. That was
Yeah,
so
exactly. That was leap in with the whale, I'd say, or the dolphin. Thank you so much.
Thank you today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Farewell. Have a lovely day. Oh gosh, we're here. I've remembered. I have one last thing. It's so much more fun to teach about these, and it's always harder for me to remember everything. There's one more thing I can tell you about that is alive and well, which is we have the membership program. And this is if you're just like, I don't want to do a course, which I think you should, but you can't should. I didn't say that. I think would be wonderful because the courses are they're potent. They're potent and they hold you for container. But if you're like, I just need a little dip in every month, This is, we have a monthly membership where I do a soul story ceremony on the new moon. So if some of you might have been to this one that we did with Deborah Silverman this last time. And then also we do a creative, some kind of story creation thing, and that changes for every month. So it's a nice another time where you can do a little dip in, dip out, no homework. Okay, that's it for me now. Colleen, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question.
Yeah.
I was wondering, how do we go about inquiring about working with you one-on-one or doing a session or yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So you can do info@leahlamb.com.
Okay.
And I can also go one step further and just give you the scheduling link for an information session, because that's what you would just be asking them for, and I can give you that link. This special link will give you the power to schedule your own session. And this is a great, like if you're wondering about, right, which program is right for you or working one-on-one, that gives us 20 minutes just to touch in and see what's right for you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Thank you so much. It was lovely. Really enjoyed it.
Um,
Take care.
you
Bye-bye.
Have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.